In this video, we're going to cover the essential keys to good BARC Speeder play. We'll talk about how to play and support your BARC Speeders, as well as look at a few top lists for the BARC Speeder from recent major tournaments. This is Legion Strategy Talk, my name is Endless, and these are the keys to playing BARC Speeders effectively.
Squad, tighten up. Form on me.
Key number 1, don't fly straight at the enemy. This is a mistake that every rookie pilot makes. You fly your BARC Speeders straight at the enemy and get them killed, you're down activations and points. Sad times for you. BARCs must use their speed to flank around enemies in cover, attacking alongside other threats to avoid being the only thing in range to shoot. You have to make use of wide deployments to give your BARCs room to maneuver. And if you find yourself on a narrow deployment, it helps to deploy your BARCs diagonally and make a 90-degree turn followed by a pivot to delay moving forward on the first turn. This will help you avoid flying into the enemy. Playing BARCs can often be a waiting game. It's important to time your attack with the rest of the army and not fly forward to outrun your own forces. Key number 2, always look for cover and line of sight block opportunities. BARCs rely on cover just as much, if not more, than your trooper units. Remember that the unit comes with natural cover 1, but this is their only native defensive tech. Don't be afraid to take a dodge token if you expect to get shot by something against which dodge tokens can help. It's important to establish with your opponent before the game what pieces of terrain grant cover to BARCs and what they can fly over. Remember that barricades never provide cover to BARC Speeders. You should utilize as many line of sight blockers as you can, especially if you can fly over or around them later. And don't neglect area terrain, especially light area terrain. It is very BARC friendly since you gain additional cover and can shoot out of it. Key number 3, order control. Order control is not always easy to maintain in Republic since there are many other powerful command cards that you'd rather be playing that don't necessarily give orders to speeders. Assault is your favorite card because it can order all 3 speeders, but usually you have a powerful character that needs an order first. Improvised orders could help, but vigilance usually crowds out the command slot in most lists. The reason order control is so important is that speeders become far more powerful when you do a last first attack, something you'll need to master to play your speeders at their best. First of all, your speeder gets an order, usually starting out of range of an enemy. Then as late in the turn as possible, you activate that speeder to make an attack. On the following turn, you try to go as quickly with your speeder as possible by issuing a second order to them. Sometimes you can't get an order to those speeders and you're at the mercy of the order pool. When you're activating your speeder first, there are some exit patterns you should keep in mind. It's not always best to aim and shoot and then move. Usually what you want to do is you want to shoot, move, or move, shoot, move. Whatever you decide to do, you must always start with a move or end with a move according to the compulsory move rules. Key number 4, defensive surges. BARCs need defensive surge tokens to do their best work, which is why you see them with characters that can spawn additional surge tokens like Anakin, Yoda, Padme, and the generic clone commander. Most Republic speeder lists cap out at 9 or 10 activations, and if you're taking 3 BARC speeders, that means your speeders are possibly going 6th or 7th, meaning that it's highly likely they will take return fire. Making them survive longer is always a good idea. It's important to protect your investment in the BARCs by supporting them well with the rest of your list. Think of it as mutually beneficial. The ARCs provide a speedy, somewhat durable support unit that is great at starting fire support, and in return the BARCs require defensive surges and additional threats. This is also why BARC speeders are so often seen in lists with the characters previously mentioned. Remember also that BARC's most hated enemies are units with Sharpshooter, Blast, and Pierce. These will mess up your BARCs, with or without surges. Key number 5, fire support. One of the big reasons to include BARCs in your list is the ability to receive fire support from your clone troopers, granting them surge to hit. Put simply, this means leaving a clone trooper unit at range 3 of an enemy and maneuvering your BARC into firing range while that clone trooper has a face-up order token. It sounds simple, but in practice this can be difficult when you have a lower activation count than your opponent. Most of your opponents are going to be aware of this tactic and move away from your clones to avoid getting hit by a fire support. The most reliable way to set up fire supports is by having a clone commander in your list and pairing direct with a fast command card. Padme can also use Seize the Initiative and Authoritative to push an order to a clone trooper and enable fire support, a tactic I covered in episode number 1 with Anakin. Padme can also use Aggressive Negotiations to shift a clone trooper unit into range 3 to enable fire support. But remember, this is a 2-pip card and you may not be going first, so your target may escape. However you set it up, it's best to go early to catch your target before it moves away. The 5 points you've just heard are the essentials of good BARC Speeder play, but that's far from all there is to it. There are some important additional questions we're going to tackle, but if you've made it this far, thanks for listening. Feel free to like and subscribe and hit the bell to be notified as soon as another episode of Legion Strategy Talk drops. Should I put heavy weapons on my BARC Speeders? I think the jury is out on this one. I don't think there's a clear verdict. Both have made cut at major events. Both are perfectly valid choices. So let's discuss the advantages and disadvantages of each, starting with weaponless BARCs. You go weaponless if you have a need for speed, and speed is good on bombing run and breakthrough. The weaponless BARC is a very efficient buy at 55 points, and it can really pad your activations. Weaponless BARCs often substitute for arc strikes and may have more mileage in a dodge meta, though this year's Nova Open results might dispute that claim. It's a 55-point fire support starter, and the fire support from a full Phase 1 Z6 trooper plus an aim from the BARC is going to average roughly 8 hits. When attacking by itself, make sure to use Arsenal to add the driver's rifle to the main cannon for 1 red, 2 black, and 1 white. The biggest downside is that it rarely breaks cover attacking by itself. It relies heavily on open shots to push damage through. Now when you take a heavy weapon, most often you're going to take the twin laser for the 4 dice. This weapon has front and rear arcs. The rear arc has some niche uses. You can shoot something while flying away, but this weapon enables the big fire supports. A fire support from a full Phase 1 Z6 plus an aim from the BARC is averaging roughly 10 hits with this weapon. When attacking on its own, the twin laser BARC has 7 dice with hit surge for 73 points, which is, in my opinion, way better than adding another Phase 1 Z6 at 75 tier list, and we're going to see that borne out when we get to the actual lists. The RPS gunner has niche uses. It has no arc, so you can shoot 360 with it. It has a minimum range of 2, so you keep that in mind when you're using it. It's 21 points. It shoots double rainbow impact 2 like an Imperial bike when you add the RPS and the main cannon together. It's a valid choice. I personally avoid it because it's quite expensive and it only gives you impact 2. Now the ion cannon is considered bad because it has to recover. It's too expensive and you'll have to recover to get more than one use out of it. Overall, taking a heavy weapon slows you down, which is possibly an advantage. It contributes less to the run forward and die problem that a lot of BARCs have. And it's easier for R2-D2 to keep up with, to repair the BARC. It's easier for Anakin and Padme to keep up with the BARC and use Exemplar to share tokens to them. Slow BARCs can still do bombing run and breakthrough, but only against lists that don't specialize in it. I would definitely avoid playing bombing run when matched against speeder bikes, staffs, or swoops. When and how should I use displacement with my BARC speeders? BARCs are repulsor vehicles and can only displace on a compulsory move. Think of it more as a bonus. It's not something you'd normally do, but if you want to displace something, the suppression should be effective, or it should force enemy troopers off an objective. This is most useful on key positions where you can use the BARC Speeder's base to crowd out places where trooper minis can stand. Now we're going to get into some individual BARC lists and find out what makes them tick. We're going to start with a list from the Nova Open Top 4 run by Mitrokeen. So you can see here he's got Anakin with Force Push, Saber Throw, Overwatch, Up Close and Personal, a Clone Commander with Vigilance, Padme Amidala with Seize the Initiative, 3 Phase 1 Clone Troopers, 1 with a Z6, 1 with an RPS, a Phase 1 Clone Captain, and Overwatch. He's got Echo, and 3 weaponless BARC Speeders. This is a great example of a weaponless BARC Speeder list. It's got all the elements I talked about in the video already. It's got Anakin for defensive surges, Clone Commander for defensive surges, Padme for the token sharing. She's also going to be using her standbys to get Anakin and the RPS captain maybe to Overwatch. I want you to notice that he only has 2 heavy weapons in this list, and that's a theme we're going to see across all of the lists that we're going to review today. I think the reason for it is that you're spending a lot of points on your command and operative slots and a lot of points on your BARC speeders, and so it results in having to make cuts in the heavy weapon department. As far as the command hand goes, it's pretty standard. Diplomatic cover is something that I might not include, and I actually asked Mitrokeen after his run at Nova if he was going to stick with diplomatic cover, and he said he might switch it out for assault just to get more order control and more fire supports in his list. We can see the objective deck here is pretty stacked. We see that Mitrokeen took an 11-point bid so that he could guarantee his objective deck. So breakthrough and bombing run, it's pretty clear why these are here. They're really good for the weaponless BARCs. Payload is also good for weaponless BARCs because you can intercept your opponent's payload at an opportune time and freeze it. You can also do displacement, like I mentioned, on key positions. And so these are all very effective, and payload and key positions are also objectives where force push from Anakin has a lot of play. because you can force push enemy units out of their payload zone or off of the key position. For his deployments, advanced positions, major offensive, and disarray all allow for great flanking opportunities for those BARCs. Rollout is interesting because it's a long deployment, short edge to short edge, but you get some ability to forward deploy your BARC speeders. Forward deploying your BARC speeders can help them get behind line of sight block. It can help them flank as well. For conditions, there's no hard and fast rules here. They're all quite flexible. He takes clear conditions, supply drop, which is great for Jedi. It's great for arc welders to heal the BARCs. Lots of useful upgrades in the supply deck for this list. Limited visibility to protect the BARCs as well, kind of delay engagement, keep snipers from killing your clones. War weary as well, reasonably good. The BARCs don't really care about courage, and everything else is pretty much going to be in range 1 of Anakin 90% of the time, so War weary, not a bad choice. Keep in mind that when choosing your battle deck, knowing what you don't want to see can often be more important than what you do want to see. Next, we have a great example of a weapon BARC list, that is BARCs with twin laser gunners. This list was piloted by Johannes, who plays in Germany. This list topped an 18-player event in Wolfschlugen, which is a town near Stuttgart in the southwest of Germany. As you can see, he's got Anakin with saber throw, force push, endurance, up close and personal, which I think is the build you use when you don't take a Pike Capo in your list for ploy. He's got the Clone Commander for extra surges and the fire support enabling. He's got R2-D2 to repair his BARCs, 2 Z6s for fire support, Echo for the utility play, and then triple laser BARCs. Something I want you to take away from this list is that you can run triple BARC Anakin without Padme and still succeed. Once R2's repair charges are spent, he'll go on to score secret mission. You can see there's blast off in the command hand. This list also has a decently healthy bid running at 9 points. Now Johannes went on from this win in Wolfschlugen to compete in Bremen, and his list changed for the Bremen tournament. It was 86 players, and I want to show you what he changed in his Bremen list. So here's the updated list. You can see that he dropped some things and added some things. He put in offensive push on Anakin over endurance because he brought in a Pike Syndicate Capo just for ploy. Just for ploy and for the cheap activation, honestly. He also dropped Echo and put Padme in his list. And Padme has Vigilance and sees the initiative. Again, techs I've mentioned already in other parts of the video. Still including R2-D2, he's got secret mission potential there again. Same with Padme. 2 Z6s, doesn't change, and then triple heavy laser BARCs. Johannes piloted this list to 4 wins and 1 loss. Now by putting Padme back in the list and putting offensive push on Anakin, you can see that he's really all in on the fire supports here. He's trying to make sure that he has as many aims as possible, whether that fire support's coming from a BARC or whether it's coming from Anakin himself. Now, as I'm recording this video, I don't have command hand or battle deck information on this list, but you can bet it looks pretty similar to what Mitrokeen ran. And honestly, I would just use Mitrokeen's battle deck as a template and adjust it depending on what you like to do. You might find that there are some things you disagree with in Mitrokeen's battle deck that you can adjust and make it better to your liking. Never just copy paste. Always think about your choices. Now, I didn't want to end this video without including Yoda BARCs in the analysis. This is another Johannes list that he played at the French Open du Nord, which is where he first really caught my attention. He made a 7-0 run with this list, which is an extremely difficult thing to do when you only have 9 activations, 2 heavy weapons, and a few BARC speeders. You'll notice that to make everything fit, he had to cut one of his twin laser gunners from his BARC speeders, making this list a mixed weapon BARC list. Yoda's 3-pip is just so excellent in this list. It supports the BARCs extremely well with order control, shared aims and surges, face-up tokens that enable the fire supports. Just an incredible card for the list. Incredible card in general. Yoda also an absolute monster at objectives, and arguably Yoda BARCs has the strongest possible objective deck out of all the options, but in my opinion this list is the hardest to play out of all the lists I've shown in this video because you're leaning on 9 activations and Yoda's 5 health, even with Chewbacca's backup. You're leaning on that to carry your objectives or your end game. There is actually a place on the internet you can go and watch the semifinals of Open du Nord featuring this list against a Veers Dubak list. The channel is called Pierre O, and his OTV brand is really great. It's all in French, fortunately or unfortunately, if you don't speak French. but you can at least get a feel for how the game went if you want to skip around. Definitely recommend OTV. I'll put a link to the video in the description. Last thing I'll say about this list is that you have to make the game as much about the objectives as possible. There are a lot of lists out there that can straight up blow you off the table if you take a list like this to a game. So really try to make it as little about the attrition as you possibly can and focus completely on the objective and doing the objective and winning the objective. And that is pretty much what I have to say about BARC Speeders. If you think I missed anything or have questions, I'd love to see your response in the comments below. Thanks much more to our patrons, Patrick Hanshin, CW, JD Nielsen, Justin Rodriguez, and Soren Pop. If you'd like to support this content, visit patreon.com/YavinBase. Make sure to check out the links in the description. This has been Legion Strategy Talk. See you next time. I started putting my swoops together. They're so freaking cool.